The morning was bright and calm, with a soft mist blanketing the edges of the dense forest near a small village where Jack and his 3-year-old son, Ivan, lived. The forest, known to locals for its beauty and occasional dangers, was a place Jack often visited to show Ivan the wonders of nature. Today seemed no different. The pair had set out early, with Jack carrying a small satchel of snacks and water, ready to explore the forest's edge. As they walked along the forest trail, Ivan's curious nature took over. He was fascinated by everything, the way the light danced through the leaves, the chirping of birds, and the scurrying squirrels darting from branch to branch. Jack, meanwhile, was keeping a watchful eye on his son, his fatherly instincts always on high alert in such an environment. "Daddy, look at this!" Ivan exclaimed, holding up a colourful feather he'd found on the ground. Jack smiled, crouching down to examine it. "That's from a parrot, Ivan. Isn't it beautiful?" Ivan nodded enthusiastically, tucking the feather into his small pocket like a treasure. The morning passed peacefully until Jack's phone buzzed in his pocket. It was a call from a client. Jack worked as a freelance carpenter and often got urgent requests. "Stay right here, Ivan," Jack said, stepping aside to take the call. Ivan, with his boundless energy, nodded, but soon became distracted by a fluttering butterfly. As Jack spoke on the phone, explaining measurements and wood types, Ivan wandered a few steps off the trail, chasing the butterfly. His giggles echoed softly, but Jack, engrossed in his conversation, didn't notice. The butterfly led Ivan deeper into the trees where the trail gave way to uneven ground, covered in moss and fallen leaves. By the time Jack hung up, Ivan was gone. Panic set in immediately. "Ivan," Jack called, his voice laced with worry. He scanned the area but saw no sign of his son. Dropping his phone into his pocket, he began searching frantically, his heart pounding. "Ivan!" he shouted, his voice echoing through the trees. Meanwhile, Ivan, now far from the trail, was starting to feel the weight of being alone. The butterfly had disappeared, and the forest suddenly felt much bigger and darker. "Daddy!" he called out, his voice trembling. The realization that he was lost brought tears to his eyes. Unbeknownst to Ivan, he wasn't truly alone. In the shadows, a pair of golden eyes watched him. A leopard, sleek and powerful, had been prowling nearby, drawn by the faint scent of a human child. It moved silently, its paws barely making a sound on the forest floor. Ivan's small footsteps caught the leopard's attention, and it began to follow him, keeping its distance but closing the gap with each passing moment. Ivan, sensing something was wrong, glanced over his shoulder and froze. The leopard was now visible, its muscular form blending with the dappled light of the forest. Terrified, Ivan turned and ran, his small legs carrying him as fast as they could. His cries for help echoed faintly, but Jack, still too far away, couldn't hear them. The leopard, unhurried, followed, its movements graceful and deliberate. Ivan's path was uneven, and his tiny feet stumbled over roots and rocks. After running for what felt like forever, he tripped over a protruding branch and fell hard onto the ground. Tears streamed down his face as he turned to see the leopard standing a mere few feet away, its gaze fixed on him. At that same moment, Jack was tearing through the forest, his voice hoarse from shouting. Each second without a response from Ivan made his heart sink further. He pushed through thick brush and low-hanging branches, ignoring the scratches on his arms and face. The only thought in his mind was finding his son. Ivan, lying on the forest floor, watched as the leopard approached. Its powerful shoulders moved rhythmically, its head low to the ground. Ivan squeezed his eyes shut, bracing for what he thought was the inevitable. The leopard paused, sniffing the air, its sharp senses picking up something familiar. It moved closer to Ivan, its nose just inches from the boy's face. Ivan, too scared to open his eyes, could feel its warm breath on his cheek. The forest seemed to hold its breath as the predator and child faced each other. Jack, still searching desperately, stumbled upon signs of Ivan's path, a small shoe print in the mud, a broken twig. He followed the trail with renewed urgency, his fatherly instincts guiding him. The forest, once serene and inviting, now felt like a labyrinth of danger. Ivan finally opened his eyes and found the leopard staring directly at him. He froze, unable to move or cry out. The leopard tilted its head slightly as if studying him. Then, to Ivan's astonishment, the big cat didn't attack. Instead, it moved closer and gently licked his face, its rough tongue brushing against his cheek. Ivan's fear began to ebb, replaced by confusion and awe. Why wasn't the leopard attacking him, Why did it seem gentle? The leopard curled its body around Ivan, shielding him from the open forest. Ivan, though still trembling, felt an odd sense of safety in the presence of this magnificent creature. As Jack closed in, he heard faint noises, sounds that didn't belong to the forest. His heart raced as he pushed through the final thicket and entered a small clearing. There he saw Ivan, unharmed, but sitting on the ground with a leopard standing protectively over him. Jack froze, his mind struggling to process the scene before him. His instincts told him to grab the stick he carried and fight. But something in the leopard's eyes stopped him. It wasn't just protecting, it was remembering. Ivan, still trembling from the encounter, remained motionless as the leopard continued to sit near him, its body relaxed yet watchful. The tension in the air was palpable, yet there was a strange calmness too. Ivan's small chest rose and fell rapidly, his wide eyes fixed on the big cat's face, which held no malice. It was as if the leopard recognized him, or perhaps sensed something in him that kept it from acting on its predatory instincts. Jack, standing a few feet away, held the thick branch in his hand with a white-knuckled grip. His every instinct screamed at him to protect his son, but his eyes couldn't deny the gentleness in the leopard's movements. The big cat's head turned slightly toward Jack, its gaze meeting his for a brief moment. It wasn't the gaze of a predator, but something softer, more searching, as if trying to place him. "Daddy?" Ivan's small voice broke through the silence, trembling but steady enough to pull Jack from his frozen state. "Ivan, don't move," Jack said, his voice calm but firm, though inside he was battling a storm of emotions. "Just stay where you are." Ivan, sensing the unspoken fear in his father's voice, didn't dare make any sudden movements. The leopard shifted slightly, its massive paws pressing into the soft ground as it looked between the boy and the man. Slowly, it stepped away from Ivan, giving the boy a small window of space, as if signaling it meant no harm. Jack took a cautious step forward, his eyes never leaving the leopard. He lowered the branch slightly, not wanting to provoke the animal. "It's okay, buddy. Daddy's here," he said to Ivan, though his heart felt like it was about to burst from his chest. The leopard, sensing the change in Jack's demeanor, tilted its head slightly and sat down on its haunches, its tail curling around its paws. It seemed almost patient, as if waiting for something. Jack, his mind racing, finally dared to look closer at the leopard's face. It hit him like a lightning bolt. Those eyes, golden and intense, were unmistakable. Memories flooded back of a time years ago when Jack had rescued a baby leopard from a dangerous situation. The leopard cub had wandered into the village, starving and scared. Jack, against all odds and the advice of his neighbors, had taken the cub in. He'd fed it, cared for it, and raised it until it was strong enough to survive in the wild. When the time came, he had tearfully released it back into the forest, hoping it would thrive. Now, staring at the leopard before him, Jack felt a deep sense of recognition. "It's you," he whispered, his voice barely audible. The leopard's ears twitched at the sound, and it took a single step closer to Jack, its posture still calm. Ivan, watching this exchange, looked back and forth between his father and the leopard, his young mind struggling to piece together what was happening. "Daddy, do you know him?" Ivan asked, his voice a mix of fear and wonder. Jack nodded slowly, his eyes never leaving the leopard. "I think so, Ivan. I think this is an old friend." The realization brought tears to Jack's eyes. He dropped the branch and crouched down, his hands resting on his knees as he looked directly at the leopard. "You remember me, don't you?" he asked softly. The leopard responded by stepping forward, its movements deliberate and slow. It stopped just a few feet from Jack, its head low as if bowing. Jack extended a trembling hand, his heart pounding with a mixture of fear and hope. The leopard leaned in, its wet nose brushing against Jack's palm. Ivan watched in awe as his father and the leopard seemed to share a moment of understanding. "Daddy, how does he know you?" Ivan asked, his voice full of curiosity. Jack turned to his son, his voice steady now. "Years ago, before you were born, I found this leopard as a baby. He was all alone, lost like you were today. I took care of him, helped him grow strong, and then let him go back to the forest. And now, he's come back." The weight of Jack's words hung in the air. Ivan's fear melted away, replaced by admiration for both his father and the magnificent creature before him. "He saved me, Daddy. When I fell, he didn't hurt me. He licked me, like he was protecting me." Jack felt a lump in his throat as he processed his son's words. The bond between the leopard and himself, forged years ago, had extended to his son in a moment of need. Jack reached out and placed a hand on Ivan's shoulder. "This is a miracle, Ivan. A true miracle." The leopard, sensing the reunion between father and son, stood up and stretched, its powerful muscles rippling beneath its spotted coat. It turned its head toward the forest, as if to say it was time to leave. Jack and Ivan watched as it walked gracefully into the trees, its silhouette blending with the dappled sunlight. "Will we ever see him again, Daddy?" Ivan asked, his voice tinged with sadness. Jack smiled, wiping a tear from his cheek. "Maybe, buddy. Maybe someday." The father and son stood in silence, the forest around them once again peaceful. Jack felt a profound sense of gratitude, not just for the leopard's actions, but for the connection they had shared. It was a story he would tell Ivan for years to come, a story of kindness, courage, and the unbreakable bond between humans and the wild. And as they began their walk back home, Jack couldn't help but glance back toward the forest, silently thanking the leopard for not only saving his son's life, but for reminding him of the power of compassion and the unexpected ways it can shape our lives. Ivan's young mind was still processing what he had just witnessed. The awe and wonder of the moment were etched deeply into his innocent eyes. He stood, clutching his father's hand, as the leopard gracefully disappeared into the foliage. But unlike a dream that fades, this encounter would remain vivid, a moment that transformed their lives forever. Jack knelt beside Ivan, brushing a speck of dirt off the boy's face. His voice was calm, yet filled with an unmistakable reverence. "Ivan, what just happened is something many people would never believe. You were protected by one of the most dangerous predators in the forest. But it wasn't just luck. It was something much deeper." Ivan, still wide-eyed, asked in a soft voice, "Do you think he remembered you, Daddy? Is that why he didn't hurt me?" Jack nodded, his gaze drifting toward the direction the leopard had taken. "I believe so, son. When I found him all those years ago, he was no bigger than you are now. He was scared, weak and alone. I didn't know if he'd survive, but I couldn't just leave him. So I helped him, and in a way, I think he never forgot." As they began to make their way back towards safety, Jack couldn't help but recount the story in more detail to Ivan. "You know, when I first brought him home, people thought I was crazy. They said a leopard could never be tamed, that it was too dangerous. But I wasn't trying to tame him. I just wanted to help him survive. Every day I'd feed him, clean his wounds, and talk to him like I'd talk to a friend. And little by little, he grew stronger. When he was ready, I knew I had to let him go. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done." Ivan listened intently, his imagination painting vivid pictures of the bond his father had shared with the leopard. He couldn't believe that the very same animal his father had once cared for had returned to protect him in his moment of need. As they reached the edge of the forest, Jack turned to Ivan with a gentle smile. "This is a lesson, Ivan. A lesson about kindness and how it can come back to you in ways you'd never expect. You might not always see the results right away, but when you act with love and compassion, the world has a way of repaying you." That evening, as they returned home, the story began to spread through their small village. Neighbors gathered to hear Jack recount the incredible tale, their skepticism giving way to amazement as they saw the sincerity in his eyes and the wonder in Ivan's. Word of the encounter eventually reached wildlife experts and conservationists who were astounded by the leopard's behavior. They explained that while wild animals rarely display such protective instincts toward humans, bonds formed during critical moments, such as Jack rescuing the leopard as a cub, could leave lasting impressions on the animal's memory. The story didn't just inspire those in the village, it sparked a larger conversation about the importance of coexisting with nature. Jack and Ivan became local heroes, not for taming the wild, but for their role in showing the world that even the fiercest creatures can respond to kindness. In the years that followed, Jack and Ivan often visited the forest, hoping to catch another glimpse of their leopard friend. Though they didn't see him again for a long time, they always felt his presence, as if he were watching over them from the shadows. The story didn't end with them, though. Inspired by the extraordinary encounter, Ivan grew up with a deep love and respect for wildlife. He went on to study zoology and became a leading voice in wildlife conservation. He dedicated his career to protecting habitats, ensuring that future generations would have the chance to experience the wonder of nature firsthand. Years later, Ivan wrote a book about his life-changing experience, titled The Leopard's Gift. It became a bestseller, touching the hearts of readers around the world. The book wasn't just about his encounter, it was a call to action, urging people to protect the natural world and recognize the profound connections we share with all living things. And as for the leopard, though he remained elusive, his legacy lived on through Ivan's work and the countless lives he inspired. Jack and Ivan often spoke of him as a guardian, a symbol of the bond that can exist between humans and the wild when approached with love and understanding. The story of Jack, Ivan, and the leopard became a legend in their village, passed down through generations as a testament to the power of kindness, the resilience of nature, and the unbreakable bonds that can form between the most unlikely of friends.